the Governor-General of Australia, His Excellency General the Honourable David Hurley, Madam First Lady, Her Excellency Mrs. Linda Hurley, Honourable Cabinet Ministers and Assistant Ministers, members of the Diplomatic Corps, esteemed staff of the Australian High Commission, senior government officials, representatives from the government department and civil society organizations, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Isambul Vinaka, and welcome to the Ministry's warehouse. Excellency, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you and your dear wife today. We are deeply honored to receive you at a venue that is directly associated with an integral component of Australia's long-standing friendship and support to Fiji. That is humanitarian support for disaster response and preparedness. Excellency, Australia has always been on our side during our darkest times, especially when our people and nation's fortunes were affected by natural hazards and disasters. I take you back to Tropical Cyclone Winston, Fiji's most catastrophic cyclone, which cost approximately 2 billion Fiji dollars in damages and claimed the lives of 44 Fijians. The Australian government provided a total of $85 million in humanitarian assistance to Fiji in that particular disaster, in the form of immediate response, early recovery assistance, and reconstruction support. This assistance by the Australian government also included the deployment of the Australian Defence Forces, which provided key operational and logistic support, comprising of personnel and assets such as the HMAS Canberra, aircrafts for aerial surveys, supply movement, and ADF engineers who were assisted in the restoration of critical infrastructure in affected communities. Excellency, this is not the only time that Australia has proven its close relationship with the Fijian people and demonstrated its willingness to lend a helping hand when we needed it. We witnessed a similar swift response and facilitation of humanitarian support to affected communities in the aftermath of the recent tropical cyclones Yasa and Ana in 2020 and 2021 respectively. The Australian government provided over $7 million in direct assistance to communities and support to the government and non-government organizations in the delivery of relief items and early recovery activities. The arrival of the HMS Adelaide provided surge support during Fiji's state of vulnerability. This was a true sense of love and compassion for the people of Fiji, as all these officers sacrificed their time here when they could have been holidaying with their families and loved ones back home. Excellency, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the good rapport and support of your team here at the High Commission, in particular Councillor Ms. Mona Balram, First Secretary Ms. Christine Donaldson, and Program Manager Humanitarian Response, Mr. Kendo Kanasinga. They worked in close collaboration with our team to ensure that resources are obtained and mobilized where they are needed. Excellency, the Bubale Partnership has further strengthened the ties between our two nations, and we are glad to witness its fruition through the opening of the Black Rock Peacekeeping and Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief Camp. The camp will strengthen our preparedness for disasters through the prepositioning of humanitarian relief supplies that can be quickly deployed to affected communities in the aftermath of a disaster. The Ministry of Rural and Maritime Development and Disaster Management has also benefited from Australia's support in the provision of technical expertise, in emergency telecommunications, the upgrading of the information technology capabilities of the National Emergency Operations Center, and business continuity support during the height of COVID-19 in the country. In that regard, Excellency, we are also grateful for Australia's support towards our nation's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic through budget support programs and the delivery of critical vaccines that have been instrumental to the reopening of borders and our journey to restore normalcy. Natural hazards and climate change pose one of the biggest challenges to Fiji's development aspirations. Over the last 10 years, tropical cyclones alone have cost over $3 billion in damages and 67 deaths in total. We are grateful that the Australian government, in recognizing the importance of disaster risk reduction and preparedness, has supported the establishment of the Preparedness and Response Fund under the Fiji Program Support Facility. This ties in well with our own efforts to minimize the impacts of disasters upon our development goals. We have taken concrete steps in that direction through the formulation of our very own National Disaster Risk Reduction Policy, which was officially endorsed by Cabinet in 2019. On that note, Excellency, I'll be leading the Fijian government delegation to the 7th session of the Global Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction next month in Bali, Indonesia. We will be showcasing to the world the progress we have achieved in the strengthening of our resilience to disasters and the challenges we have encountered along the way. We are also privileged to be representing the Pacific in the global platform, along with the Republic of Palau, Tonga, and Nauru. And we will surely advocate for and promote the issues faced by Pacific Island nations in disaster risk management on the global stage. Later on this year, I also expect to be in Brisbane for the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, where I intend to push for stronger partnerships and deeper cooperation across the region as we seek to continue our recovery from COVID-19 and accelerate action on disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. Excellency, we look forward to the continuation of the close collaboration and cooperation between our two nations in the disaster management space. We hope to further progress our Ware partnership through the development of projects and other areas of cooperation that will ultimately strengthen our mutual resistance to disasters and ensure the sustainable development of our respective nations and people. Excellency, last but not least, we acknowledge Australia's financial support in sponsoring the Fijian sports team in the Australian Rugby and Rugby League competitions. And we note with pride the sterling performances of our Ndrua men's and women's teams in the Super Rugby competition. Excellency, on a light note, I hope that your schedule allows you to join us in cheering the Ndrua, our men's team, on their first game on Fijian soil this Saturday. With these remarks, Excellency, I once again warmly welcome you and look forward to our discussions in due course. And I thank you very much.
I should begin by declaring that I'm a Brumbies fan and a South Sydney Rabbits supporter in rugby league. So if you want to leave now, please, you have a few moments. The Minister, thank you very much, and thank you for the continuation of an extremely warm and heartfelt welcome to Fiji for Linda and I and my party from Canberra. We have seen a lot, we've heard a lot. In all that we have seen and heard, every pronouncement, every engagement reinforces how close this relationship is. And I want to talk a bit about that this afternoon. But could I, first of all, though, acknowledge the Honourable Minister for Defence, National Security and Policing, Minister Seruiratu, the Honourable Minister for Health and Medical Services, Minister Wanigina Bete, Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, Minister Uzumate, Honourable Assistant Minister for Rural and Maritime Regional and Disaster Development and Disaster Management, Nuth and Singarara, the Commander of the Republic of Fiji Military Forces, General Kalaniwai, Commissioner of Police, Brigadier Nigiliao, senior Fiji officials, of course our Excellency John Feeks, the Australian High Commissioner, and Your Excellency Luke Danilau, the Fijian High Commissioner to Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say, delight to be here. As you can imagine from my career background in the military, particularly in my later days as a senior military officer, managing Australia's response to disasters, natural disasters, was part and parcel of my work. And of course, contingent with that, or alongside that, was helping to provide support for the region when natural disasters hit throughout Southeast Asia and the Pacific. The Minister kindly went through the amount of money that Australia has provided in response to particular natural disasters or helping to prepare. Money's critical, of course. We can't do it without money. But the money means nothing if the systems aren't in place and the people aren't in place to actually deliver the effect we want on the ground. And so today what we're actually doing is recognising how that money is translated into a powerful effect by your organisation representing so many others who work in this space here in Fiji, but for what you do, particularly for your own people and just as importantly for the region, together with your friends in the region. And I can't overstress that. Again, as the Minister mentioned, as the MC mentioned, I was the Governor of New South Wales before I became the Governor-General. So I have been in vice-regal appointments for 8 years. I would think in every one of those 8 years there's been a natural disaster in Australia that we have had to respond to, that Linda and I have visited. Only 2 weeks ago to northern New South Wales, southeast Queensland, for floods which are beyond imagination. If we thought the bushfires were bad, the floods are terrible. Absolutely worse. But critical to recovery, critical to taking those people forward, critical to assuring them about their future is the quality of the response. So the systems, the organisations in place, your sister organisations and institutions are critical. And it's when we go around and we meet our equivalent, the SES Special Emergency Services, the RFS, Rural Fire Services, all those different services and their headquarters, that's where we see the engine at work. That's where the investment of the dollars is seen in its real sense. For each and every one of you who works in the headquarters, in the mainstream, hands-on, the logistics are critical. You remember that famous American general, I can't remember his name, but in World War II said, "I can't spell logistics, but get me more of it." This warehouse, absolutely critical to the flow through to people who are in need. We can't deposit if we don't have a logistics system, and we can't respond without a logistics system. So you know better than me how this all ties together. So for those in leadership positions, thank you for what you do for Fiji and the region. For those who are on the ground, getting their hands dirty, thank you for what you do. That is absolutely critical work as well. And that interface with Australia and interface with our friends, the Kiwis and others who come to help each other in times of difficulty is also so important. So again, for each of you who put into those exchanges in place, the interoperability, the communications, thank you for what you do in that space. I'm really here today to see and touch, of course, that's important, but really just to acknowledge how special this relationship has been both for Australia, Fiji and the broader Pacific. From the Tonga disaster we've recently had for your own, for ours, I've said at a couple of events this week. 2020, Linda and I went down to East Gippsland, which is eastern Victoria, where the bushfires came through around Malakuta. Whoever thought in my life I would see an Royal Australian Navy ship standing offshore of Australia to evacuate Australians from a bushfire off the beach. This is how serious it was. You sent engineers from RFMF to Omeo, little village, that was almost burnt to a crisp. Those engineers changed lives because after each day's hard work, they would go down to the local oval, grab all the school kids, play games with them and sing. It might be a small country. We're a big island. But you change lives, you save lives. So I thank you for that. Very important. It's a great relationship. Money, important, but without you, without who you represent, means nothing. So thank you. Headquarters, workers, logistics, getting the support out there, having the antenna up when the cyclone season comes, being prepared. That's the name of the game, and you do that extraordinarily well. So congratulations. Thank you for having us here today. God bless you, and I hope that we don't need to practice this other than in theory in the future. But that's not the way of the world, we know that. So be ready for the next one. So God bless Fiji, Vanaka Vakalavu. Thank you.